Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Amit, and welcome to this webinar on deploying drones to fight coronavirus. Today, we have with us Captain Stephen Anand, General Manager, ideaForge, and an Indian Army veteran. He has deep expertise in leading drone-based intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions. As a part of ideaForge, he has played a key role in planning and executing drone missions for disaster relief operations, especially during the floods in Uttarakhand. Today's webinar is for authorities, enterprises, and consultants who want to implement drone-powered solutions for security and surveillance and ground monitoring to contain the spread of COVID-19. Today's webinar will be divided into two sessions. The first session will be a 45-minute speaking session, during which Captain Stephen will take us through how the coronavirus pandemic has changed the current scenario, both globally and in India, followed by the challenges in mitigating the spread of the disease. He will then talk about how drones have been deployed all over the world to fight the battle against coronavirus. At the end of the session, he will take us through 3 live case studies that have established the role of drones as a force multiplier. The next session will be a 10-minute question and answer session. I request the audience to type in the questions in the Q&A box in the top left corner if you're using your laptop or desktop, and in the bottom right corner if you're using your mobile device. Your questions will be taken at the end of the speaking session. With this, I ask Captain Stephen to take over. Over to you, Captain.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Amit, for the introduction. Let me take this opportunity to speak a few words about ideaForge. ideaForge is a company established in the year 2007 by 3 IITians from IIT Bombay. And it has been almost 13 years since its inception that the company has been a front runner in the field of UAVs. Our UAV-based solutions have been extensively deployed by various government and defense establishments for multiple operational intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance and mapping activities. And with more than 700 systems and 1,300 pilots in the environment, ideaForge has been successfully engaged with the end users to help them solve critical problems using UAVs. Let us now straight away dive into today's topic, and that is deploying drones to fight COVID-19. The new coronavirus disease is attacking societies at their core, claiming lives and people's livelihoods. Its potential long-term implications on economy and individual countries are dire in nature. The speed and scale at which the outbreak is unfolding is unpredictable to a great extent, but certainly not uncontrollable. With nations running out of beds for infected patients, personal protective equipments, and production of immunization vaccines are still under development as per the World Health Organization. It is an unavoidable situation which demands us to gather all our resources, technology, might, to explore all potential tools, techniques, and measures to win this battle against the spread of COVID-19. A global scenario on the pandemic portrays a very grim picture indeed. Presently, almost 50% of the world population is under lockdown. With steep climb in the number of positive COVID-19 cases world over, the virus also has claimed more than 88,000 human lives. Present Indian scenario is also sending signals of requiring deeper collaboration and coordination and will to fight this invisible enemy. I think before we commence our discussion towards drone-based solutions, it would be appropriate for us to have a quick understanding on what are the various stages of transmission of COVID-19. And this question is significant for us to know and correlate with the current and prevailing on-ground situation, thus helping us to provide a suitable technological solution. The four stages of transmission of COVID-19 would be stage 1, and it is the first appearance of the disease through people with a travel history, with everyone contained, their sources traced, and no local spread from those affected. The number of those infected would be quite low at this stage. Whereas in stage 2, which is a local transmission, those who are infected have a travel history, spread the virus to close friends or family, and at this stage, every person who came in contact with the infected can be traced and isolated. Stage 3 is a stage of community transmission, when infection happens in public and a source for this virus cannot be traced. At this stage, large geographical lockdowns become important as random members of the community start developing the disease. And yes, stage 4 is when the disease actually becomes an epidemic in a country, such as it was in China, with large number of infections and a growing number of deaths with no end in sight. It is then considered to be endemic or now prevalent in the region. Now that we have understood the stages of transmission, I'm now confident that we will be able to connect with the reason why we went into a swift nationwide lockdown plan. Restricting our movement will help us to stop and control the spread of virus to a great extent. As per our Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, many nations have applauded such a bold initiative by the Government of India to contain the spread of the virus. With this understanding, let us now ponder on possible solutions which we have in hand as the need of the hour. We as solution providers have pledged towards acting in favor of our social responsibility to stand together in solidarity with our nation and fight for the cause for survival and humanity as a whole. With this given reality, let us now understand the broader challenges which are crucial to be addressed. How do we keep ourselves updated with the required situational awareness in a constantly changing environment? How can we counter the challenge of the sporadic lawbreakers amongst the populace and those willful offenders who ignore the lockdown guidelines? Can a technology help us to identify symptomatic virus carriers or at-risk individuals who might be displaying symptoms related to COVID-19? In this case, individuals running high body temperatures. And how do we sanitize the areas infected on a regular basis to avoid and control transmission of virus? The solutions to these challenges are deploying drones to fight coronavirus. And when we are looking at solving these broader challenges with the help of drones, three major categories can be given immediate attention. Number 1, security and surveillance. Number 2, crowd monitoring. And number 3, drone-based delivery and spraying disinfectants. Let us now get into details on security and surveillance, where drones can be effectively deployed and create a stronger impact in the fight. Drones, with the help of the daylight and thermal imagery cameras, will assist the ground forces to maintain and enhance their intensive surveillance requirements by providing real-time intelligence and video. And this real-time imagery can also be seamlessly transmitted to the command and control center, thus enabling the decision makers to mobilize the ground units if required. And some of the critical operational capabilities would be the features of optical zoom, which provides a detailed perspective of the area while allowing to zoom into individual suspects. The dynamic moving target indicator features assists in chasing and follow a suspicious vehicle and get its real-time location with precision. The 640 by 480 thermal imaging cameras, enabling night patrolling parties with significant reconnaissance capabilities to navigate through high activity zones. The next would be the target tracking feature, which is an enhanced tool of surveillance, which assists the user to track intended static or moving objects and provide valuable intelligence to the law enforcement authorities. The sheer ability to stay in air for more than 30 to 40 minutes and travel approximately 4 kilometers radial distance allows the police units to have a prolonged, uninterrupted, actionable surveillance feed. And this video database can also be used by governments, administrative authorities, and local organizations to study the pattern of the movement of the people and plan their operational guidelines. We're talking about petrol areas not covered by CCTV cameras, as we are aware that it would be very difficult and an improbable proposition for the local administration to cover all areas with CCTVs. The idea of using the drones will enhance their surveillance capabilities many-folds and access information even from places where human movement is limited or restricted in nature. A coordinated patrolling between aerial and ground units for these areas is definitely recommended so as to extend the surveillance net. And this third subtopic would be our communication through megaphone drones. I'm very sure that we all must have read and seen footages and read articles in the newspaper as well and in television channels. Drones, in the broader understanding of security and surveillance during COVID-19, can also be integrated with megaphones. I'm sure with the intention to keep the general public to stay indoors, our government has adopted a multi-pronged approach of reaching out to them through IVR calls, messaging services, TV and radio ads, and also the local police have been proactively involved in carrying out announcements through their ground-based megaphone units. With the integration of megaphones in drones, the police can freely access all inaccessible terrains and corners and reach out to people on a repetitive manner without much of coordination and involvement of manpower resources. I believe this feature, coupled with the ability to increase or decrease altitude of the UAV, provides the much intended support to navigate and communicate in densely built up areas and cities such as Mumbai. And the fourth is preventing theft and unlawful activities using drones. With the very limited manpower resources and larger area to cover, it practically becomes a nightmare to maintain the required level of security, especially during a pandemic scenario and lockdown. This drone surveillance of areas both during day and night will certainly act as a force multiplier and a deterrent towards crime in the society. Now, detecting movement patterns and providing sensitive intelligence on areas with a 24/7 aerial surveillance support will certainly be a confidence builder for the ground units to negotiate, handle, and neutralize criminal activities and threats. The fifth and a very critical subtopic would be emergency response teams and their actions thereof. With the lockdown in place and an ability to have an eye in the sky, it definitely will assist emergency response teams to divert their resources at a quicker response time, ensuring them safe passage. UAVs also have highly developed dynamic flight plan navigation systems, which enables the user to directly mobilize the emergency response units to give real-time feed and can also help them analyze the situation and provide possible solutions until help arrives. UAVs equipped with high-definition day cameras, the videos which are transmitted to the ground control station helps in identifying fire, smoke, and even roadblocks, thus providing necessary updated information of the incident area. The compatibility of mapping payloads in UAVs is seen as a very important feature for the administrative and law enforcement officials, as it enables the user to map the COVID-19 hot zones or clusters and plan accordingly for stricter implementation of lockdown measures. The second major category, wherein you can create a deeper impact by using drones, is during crowd monitoring. In the application of crowd monitoring, we will be able to achieve considerable milestones, especially in the areas which are difficult to control with on-ground manpower efforts. Live video feed received from the UAV can be transmitted to the command and control center, which can be integrated with an advanced video analytics tool or software, thus enabling the surveillance teams to carry out head counts or people density identifications. It also helps the administration to validate operational and deployment status of ground personnel as per the security plan. Furthermore, UAV can guide the ground units by providing necessary video evidence towards social distancing at places where anticipated and regulated public movements are permissible. The high-definition video allows law enforcement agencies to strictly enforce lockdowns, not only during day but also at night. Now, this capability is seen as a crucial feature as it allows the ground units to navigate and allocate the available sparse manpower to the desired locations with actionable intelligence. The ability to detect movement in prohibited areas is considered as a substantial tool in the field of surveillance and reconnaissance. Now, we all have a habit of gathering on our rooftops. People also have a tendency to gather on rooftops, which again will be a cause for the spread of the virus. The ability of the UAV to take vantage positions will help police and law enforcement agencies to remotely access the rooftops and disperse the crowd, if any. Furthermore, the geotagging feature, which are available in UAVs, help mark the incident area and dispatch the ground units to warn the citizens who are involved. So countries like China have also integrated sophisticated hardware and software, which helps in scanning the body temperature of individuals in order to detect the visible symptoms developed due to COVID infections. The third and yet another significant area where drones can presently be deployed will be delivery and spraying segment. Drones have an advantage to navigate to the desired location in a shorter duration, and this capability, combined with the ability to carry medical or supplies, makes it a force multiplier in a real-world scenario. They can be deployed for delivering vital medical kits, emergency or first aid kits, or even limited amount of food packets. Even in those areas where it's difficult or challenging in nature. Spraying disinfectants, again, this is another important area where drones have also been deployed by various Middle Eastern and European nations on a role of spraying disinfectants. Recently, you must have seen even India is trying to adopt this strategy. This will help in covering large areas and improve the frequency of spraying disinfectants at regular intervals, thus saving time and resources for the local authorities. Experiences on how Mumbai and its Corona warriors are fighting COVID-19 using drones. The first case of application will be contact tracing. Dharavi, a densely populated area situated in the Mumbai city, with a population of approximately 700,000, and population density is at a staggering figure of more than 270,000 per square kilometer. Out here, the mission of BMC is to safely conduct contact tracing activity and also conduct surveillance operations with the available manpower resources. BMC understood the problem and they deployed drones which were equipped with high definition daylight payload, and the agency was able to carry out multiple missions covering even larger areas at a shorter duration. The obtained video from the UAV was transmitted live to the command and control center and assisted the authorities to act on real time intelligence. The footage is what you're seeing now is a screen grab from the command and control center from BMC. The results of this particular mission shows an astounding statistical data. Almost 25 times increase in area under surveillance and 3 times increase in surveillance speed. And another critical aspect which we have gained is where in this exercise the ground forces had reduced risk of infection while enforcing the tracing procedures and lockdown. The next case study would be on how the state disaster response force of the state of Maharashtra was able to successfully cover hot COVID-19 zones, namely Bhiwandi and Mumbai. The SDRF decided to adopt a unique strategy of carrying out announcements using drones and amplify the reach of messages to enforce strict social distancing measures and act on lockdown violations. You can see the population strength and the density per square kilometer for both the towns. With the help of our drones, the users were able to identify small clusters and groups of people were gathered together. And the same system was connected to the walkie-talkie of the local city police. By observing these gatherings, announcements were made to discourage them in gathering and maintain the social distancing. The results again on these kind of missions for the user is really astounding. 16 times increase in area under surveillance and 50% reduction in response time. Now the third and final case study which I would like to discuss with every one of you would be with the Sangli police missions. Sangli city, a population of around 5 lakhs with a density of 4,000 persons approximately per square kilometer, had faced a very unique challenge. This town was also considered to be one of the cities which was initially peaking with COVID-19 positive cases. And the police, as per their initial observations, had noticed increased violations of lockdown, which would potentially lead to growing number of positive COVID-19 cases in the region. With many areas without CCTV coverage, it is pertinent to mention that the police were up for the task to take the fight to the next level. So you could actually see the screen grabs taken from the UAVs on identifying probably places where people might possibly get together to purchase groceries or in front of medical shops or gather on rooftops. So the moment the police were able to identify these incidents or violations for that matter, they swiftly were able to dispatch teams to those incident sites. They were consistently monitoring the crowds outside the stores which are providing essential goods and services. In this case, it could be medical stores, and immediately instructed them to maintain social distance as well. And the result, again, is 25 times increase in area under surveillance and 45% reduction in response time. With this, I conclude our discussions. Amit?
Thank you, Stephen, for that insightful session. Guys, we are now starting the Q&A session. We have several questions from the audience, Stephen.
Yeah,
So
sure.
we'll take a few. The first one, here it goes. How long can a drone fly without break?
Okay. So that's a good question. So the endurance of the aircrafts vary from, let's say, 20 minutes to 2 hours. So it depends on the battery capacity and the mission requirements. So there are drones which are smaller in size, which are designed to carry out certain specific tasks, which may not need to fly for longer durations. There are drones which probably have a capability to uh, fly longer and fly higher with larger mission times. So it varies from 2 to 2 hours and beyond that as well. Yeah.
All right, thank you. The next question is, do drones in India have radiometric payloads that can identify the temperature of a human body?
So right now, yes, there are instances which we have come across. There are technologies which we have come across. There are countries which have used these technologies successfully as well, especially under these circumstances. There are radiometric payloads which can detect temperature variance in multiple surfaces. So yeah.
Okay. Okay. This is an interesting one. So, considering the uneven distribution of COVID-19 cases in several states
Mhm.
and the idea of the staggered ending of the lockdown being floated around,
Hmm.
do you think drones can augment the current resources available?
Yeah, absolutely. Because see, that's going to be a huge strategic as well as operational challenge as well when we are going to uh, lift lockdowns in a staggered way, right? So in certain areas, the manpower resources will be focused uh, to see the after effects of lifting the lockdown. In certain areas, we have to enforce lockdown as well. Now we have very limited manpower resources. So in our previous case studies, whatever we saw in those three case studies, a lot of learnings came out of that, right? Where the police to population ratio is actually less, especially in a country like ours. And how are they actually solving this problem? They're solving this problem by using technologies, which is very evident. And right now, we will be able to have a look at, specifically on those areas where people are gathering, let's say rooftop or probably a corner of a shop, or it could be even in front of a medical store, like how we discussed in front of an essential supply stores, which we have already identified, which we know. So there is no requirement for probably a police team to be present there physically. Probably a UAV would be able to, uh, give them that perspective, and then with the obtained perspective, they can mobilize their, manpower resources. So definitely using UAVs under these conditions will help them, and will therefore it is I clearly underline and then I put it in bold that it is a force multiplier. Yeah.
Right. The next question is, what privacy concerns must the authorities take into consideration before using drones? This is an interesting one. Stephen?
Yeah, that's a good question actually. Privacy is a very important topic, and it's a great topic to discuss as well, especially now things are changing. The current scenario where so many things are exposed, right? And information and data security and all these topics we are talking about. Obviously, so these drones are currently in the hands of organizations and individuals in whose hands we have given the trust and we have given, who hold the responsibility to safeguard our and protect us, right? So they, within their means, within their potential, whatever technologies they have, they will do it to the maximum extent. They'll try and ensure that we remain safe. So drones, when they are actually flying, is completely within the control of the operator, and he has full controls. And drones will never be able to, uh, you know, get into a restricted scenario or restricted zone if that area is already earmarked and then blocked. So if there are green zones, which probably in his missions he would have demarcated clearly, and then he'll be executing those flights on those areas only. So I think they are clearly safe equipments used if it is used by people who are helping us to save our lives. In this case, police and disaster response teams.
Right. The next question is, are there any AI tools for crowd monitoring? Like, for example, doing a head count or people identifying people with elevated body temperature.
Yes, there are tools. There are tools and softwares. So the classic example of what we saw in China, which they were using because of the pandemic outbreak, the footages which were received from the UVs were uh, transmitted to a particular ground command center, and probably they have an additional video analytics tool which is running, and which could, with the help of the sensors on the UV, it is probably helping to detect the variations in the body temperatures. Yeah.
Okay. Uh, we have this question from Harvinder. He's asking about, I think the use of fixed wings over multi rotors would be a lot more efficient if they're equipped with solar panels. Then why not use fixed wings?
Good question. That's a very good question. So we are talking about area of operation as well. Now we have to talk about challenges, right? And in the current scenario, in the present day world, we're talking about a situation where cities like Mumbai, or state like Maharashtra, or states like Uttar Pradesh, I can speak about India, densely populated states and cities, right? And we hardly find space to have fixed wing aircrafts, probably which requires a landing space or a takeoff or a launch pad. It's very difficult to find such open grounds right now. That is one of the operational challenges, you can say. The second thing, in an operation, in a surveillance operation, especially near built-up areas, imagine a scenario where you have a quadcopter, a multi-rotor in your words, which is mounted with payloads with cameras, which has a capability to hover at one point and stare at a particular location. Now that is a big advantage. That's a huge advantage. Without your perspective being changed, you can still keep changing the location of the aircraft. Whereas in the fixed wing case, what happens is the aircraft has to orbit around a particular target. That has its own advantage. But in these conditions, with a very restricted operational place, I think quadcopters will be a better option for you to go for. And yes, I completely agree. Solar panel UVs are there, but they are for different applications and they're for a different use case altogether. And yes, we are yet to reach a place where it can be miniaturized, and then probably it can be easily foldable and fly for longer durations. So, as per my understanding, they are slightly heavier, and we're yet to come to a point where it can be probably made to be man portable or very easily deployable. Yeah, Matt.
Right. There's another question. What
Mhm.
would be the accuracy of geotagging? I think this is particularly important in the context of security and surveillance because you need to have that accountability for knowing which all locations have been surveyed and are under surveillance, right? So,
Yeah.
Steve, can you answer this?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good question again. So it depends on what we're looking at, right? In this case, let's say we're looking at a building, we're looking at a target which is probably slightly bigger, and maybe the accuracy will be ranging between uh, less than 50 meters. So I think yeah, so that'll be a great place for us to be. Yeah, Amit, less than 50 meters. Amit.
Yeah. Um, Here's a question from Guy Alexander. Before a mission, does a flight plan need to be filed with the air traffic control?
Good question again. As per the regulations, civil aviation regulations, yes, the CAR clearly states that we need to file the flight plan with the ATC, which is very important.
Okay. Another question goes like, how long does it take to recharge the battery? How many drones would be required for one operation?
Okay, so it depends on what kind of endurance we're looking at. So if it's an aircraft which can fly for, let's say, uh, approximately an hour, 40 minutes to 1 hour, so it might take 45 minutes to 1 hour to charge probably a battery. And uh, what is the second question? Can you please state the second question as well?
The second question was, how many drones are required for one operation?
Oh yeah, so I think the turnaround time of any drone, in this case it's a quadcopter system. If we talk about it, it's very less. So all you have to do is, let's say if the aircraft is flying for 40 minutes, the system comes back for landing, and then you have to swap the discharged battery with the fully charged battery, and then take off. So it'll the turnaround time will be under 5 minutes, and then we finish the pre-flights, and then we take off, and again it is on with the mission. So I think we can look at probably one system for that particular application what you're looking at, unless you have multiple areas to cover, you have larger areas to cover, and probably you have very lesser time. So then obviously proportionately the equipments also uh, might be considered to be higher.
Right. Another question is, do we have the capacity to deploy drones across the country?
Do we, in the sense,
As in the manufacturing drone industry is
drone
what I
industry?
believe the question revolves around.
So that'll be a very interesting scenario for us. There, yeah, of course, it will have its own challenges as well, and it depends on what kind of applications and what kind of organizations are looking at deploying of drones. So right now, as you're aware, the Ministry of Home Affairs, the Ministry of Defense, the National Disaster Response Force, so these organizations plus our special forces, they have been using our systems extensively in all parts of the country. And the best learning what we can get from here is we have developed, India has developed this capability in house. A lot of homegrown companies are there which are trying to step in and you know be in this field of UV. So that's a big a boost for this industry. Yes, there will definitely be challenges, and there is a possibility as well. There's no doubt about it.
Okay, thanks. We have a really interesting question from Dr. Vivek Mendonsa.
Okay.
He's asking, do you have crowds throwing stones at the drones?
Okay, so that's a good question, sir. That's a very good question because that's a very important perspective as well, which I can understand from where you are arriving at. Normally, these questions, these kind of questions, typically are asked by you know uh, by forces who are actually using these drones in operational areas. Say, what if there is a possibility where people spot it and then they try and throw something. So right now we are not looking at scenarios where we'll be flying very low, right? Because as we had discussed in our webinar, uh, it's a nice aircraft, so it has the capability to stay away, stay higher, and yet with the help of the camera which is mounted on board, you can actually zoom in and then look at the target. So you will be able to detect a human sized target even from a distance of 400 500 meters of slant range. So it is going to be extremely challenging for anyone to even aim, and for that matter, even fire. And the aircraft has a capability to fly higher as well, especially in operational areas. So UAVs have all these covered capabilities, and then once it takes off and starts going into the air, and I think it's very difficult for you to spot as well. So yeah.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Thanks. Another question is on the privacy of the video stream. So he's asking whether a video stream is encrypted and if anyone can hack into it.
Absolutely. So the videos stream is completely encrypted, and only the operator who is operating the system is empowered to see the footages. Apart from that, as we discussed, the same footage, if it is designed, there is a feature to transmit it live to another command and control center. Probably they will be able to see that. No one else will be able to tap it or see it because it's completely encrypted.
Okay. The next question is do you need line of sight for drone operations or is there any other way?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So, line of sight for drone operations. So yes, we have right now. We have been, most of the drones have been operating by a simple mechanism of, let's say, there's a ground control station which comprises of an antenna, and then commands. The uplink is sent to the UAV, and the aircraft responds based on the commands whatever the operator is giving. Right. So as long as the aircraft is flying within the line of sight of the wireless transmission, we have a great communication link, a positive communication link. Now, having said that, drones also have a very important feature, fail-safe feature, and that is, what if the communication fails? That's probably could be the next question with which we can connect it and understand it. So there's nothing to worry even if there is a loss in the link.
Hmm.
System is programmed to return back to the same position from where it took off, and it will land automatically. So this is a very important fail-safe feature, which is there in almost all UAVs, all drones, you can say. Yeah.
Thank you. Another question is do you have instances of drones going rogue? If so, how do you recover these drones, especially if they are flying over dense areas?
A brilliant question. So this experience was when we actually end up probably designing a prototype or flying something very new. Otherwise, when it is fully materialized and the design is completely on a reliable scale of productions, I think this point is looked into in a way that by talking by focusing on two GPS receivers which are there on board of the aircrafts. So I can actually speak about drones which have multiple GPS receivers on board. Um, which helps in redundancy. So GPS receivers are very crucial for the drones to hold their positions, right? To know in which position they are flying. So having multiple GPS receivers will actually help us avoid uh, in getting into this flyaway situation.
Right. The next question is something I have been wondering about. Why is not a satellite being used for line of sight or doing the surveillance?
So probably for a good question. So yes, there are UAVs. There are different category and classification of UAVs, which use such kind of links, such kind of satellite links. Now they are in a different classification scale altogether. They are much bigger in size. Their operational capabilities are different. They are strategic in nature. They can probably fly for more than 24 hours. They can take off in a place and then land in a different country altogether. So now we are talking about miniaturized mini drones, right? So we uh, adopt a very much simpler and robust strategy in this case. That is a simple transmission placed on the ground. With the help of that transmission, air command and controls are given.
Okay, thanks. One more question. Um, this comes from Harun. Since movement of pilots is an issue with the current travel restrictions, is there any scope for remote training of administration consultants or pilots? And how do you still manage to transport drones to the incident site?
Brilliant question, Varun. So I think, see, as we can understand from our discussions, what we have been seeing so far since the beginning of this webinar, what I can see is that it is a life-saving equipment. And the governments all over the world have recognized this, have understood this, right? So then it becomes an essential service. Any operator, any pilot who is going to take this aircraft and stepping onto the field, out of the field, his premises, is looked as a person who's you know a police official who is going to do it, will certainly be looked like a savior here. So transportation of UAVs also are enabled uh, because of the sheer fact of the act in which the UAV is getting into. So this is actually going to help us in many ways, right? So I don't see a challenge there in governments understanding this possibility of integrating this technology in this fight against coronavirus.
Okay, brilliant. One last question, Stephen, because time's running out. We have a lot more questions, but unfortunately, we don't have the time. So the last question goes like, if you're flying over these densely populated areas, what kind of fail-safes should a drone have?
Good question. So maybe I can list out a few fail-safes straight away. One, as we discussed earlier, for that particular question, which was asked about line of sight, that is a fail-safe communication. So whenever there's a communication failure, the aircraft or the drone senses that there is a communication failure between the drone and the ground control station. Aircraft comes back to the same point, that is the home position from where it took off, and then it will land automatically. The second fail-safe, which is again a very crucial and critical fail-safe feature, in this case it is battery. Fail-safe battery is nothing but as a drone operator, an operator need not worry about, in this case I'm talking about a fully autonomous drones, he need not worry about what is the battery voltage, and how long will I be able to fly. So the entire burden is taken care of by the autopilot. The operator need not worry about it at all. He can continue to focus on his missions and whatever he is doing. Now, what happens when there is going to be a trigger? The autopilot senses that there is probably a condition where the battery is now reaching a threshold point and that it needs to come back. Right, the moment it realizes that, it triggers an auto landing mechanism, and system comes back to the home position and lands automatically. So these are the two critical fail-safe features which are very essential in drone operations. Yeah.
Absolutely. Stephen, so we have time for one last question and then we will be ending the Q&A session.
Okay.
Question is, how long can we trace, for how much distance can we trace suspected vehicles or people?
Mhm.
And is facial recognition available in drones?
Yeah. So to answer the first question, tracing a moving object, tracing a moving vehicle, we can trace as far as the UV can go. So in this case, the range of the aircraft is going to dictate terms. Like there are aircrafts, there are UVs, there are drones which can fly for 2 kilometers, which can fly for probably 5 kilometers, which can go even up to 15 kilometers. So all these drones will have probably the limitations of touching the range, right? So till that point, we can, trace the moving object. And Amit, can you please repeat the second part of the question?
Yes. Is facial recognition available on drones?
Yeah. So the drone footages which are received and transmitted to the command center, centralized center, probably that raw footage can act like a feed, and then an overlay of that, probably a data analytics tool, can be added as an overlay, and then help in a facial recognition concept. So drones per se, they can identify and detect objects, but for facial recognition, I think it's a work in progress for all of us. But it's a great collaboration what we can think about in future. Amit?
Thanks, Stephen. And thank you for answering all these questions in detail. With this, we conclude our Q&A session. I thank the entire audience for the overwhelming response and the questions that we have got. Unfortunately, we can't answer all of them, but please do reach out to us at business@ideaforge.co.in with the questions. Stephen, would you like to conclude the webinar with a quick note?
Yeah, absolutely, Amit. Thank you. I thank you all for giving me an opportunity to share my experiences with you. And I firmly believe that we all can now proudly act as a guiding light to all those who need our help at this hour. And I also urge every single participant to go and spread this message to all your colleagues on how drones have been revolutionizing the fight against COVID-19 while helping us to remain safe and protect the precious human lives. Thank you. Thank you, guys.